Beardsley was one of the most famous and notorious artists in the 1890s. Some people called the 1890s the Beardsley years. He almost exclusively worked in pen and ink.
I love that quote by Beerbohm where he says that Beardsley is always seeking the immediate echo of a great notoriety. By that I mean that Beardsley is always seeking fame, both positive for his drawings, but also perhaps the scandalous and the shocking, and the duality between those two.
He was diagnosed with tuberculosis when he was 7. He died when he was only 25. Interestingly, I think his disease was a driving force at the same time. I love how Simmons said, he had the fatal speed of those who are to die young and that absorption of a lifetime in an hour.
It's amazing to think that he did 1,000 drawings in such a short time. I think you really get a sense of how he's constantly drawing and producing new work.
And there was this first major commission to do Le Morte d'Arthur, and he worked on this for 2 years. It's at that point that he can stop working as a clerk, finally, and dedicate himself to his drawings.
Although we've brought together all these original drawings, most people wouldn't have known them at all, and actually it would have been the prints that would have been.
Yes, that's the paradox. He was known for the prints, and the drawings are so much more beautiful. I mean, they have this depth. You can see the quality of the ink. You have this outstanding beauty. But he also distorts features, he distorts lines, he plays on scale. And this is why he's so provocative and subversive. It's like you're seduced by the beauty of his line, but at the same time, there are some strange details which caused uproar with his contemporaries.
Yeah, the more you look, the more you see. I love with Morte d'Arthur where you can see those kind of spider webs coming in and the treble clefs and, of course, the phallus.
Yes, the phallus, of course.
Always.
The bang. The Victorians have this reputation for being repressed and having this strict moral code. And of course, Beardsley doesn't really care about the establishment, and he's actually quite keen to embrace notoriety, which is not healthy as far as Victorian contemporaries are concerned.
He kind of cultivated this image of effortlessness as well, didn't he? And hid the way he worked so that it always appeared like he was this kind of suave, decadent figure. One of the key works that Beardsley did was he was the art editor of the Yellow Book. This was this new art and literature magazine, and it was known for its audacity. The yellow cover in itself was deliberately provocative. It was a really fashionable colour, but it also was the cover that French novels, French erotic novels, yes, had as their wrappers. So it would have immediately signified to people that this was something that was going to be shocking.
Victorians felt that Beardsley was quite a shocking illustrator because he showed that side of London, the nightlife, the decadent lifestyle, but also independent women. There was a thirst for freedom, for women in the 1890s. We have this special room in the exhibition, which we call the Boudoir, and contains the curiosa, or the most explicit, sexually explicit works that Beardsley did. Beardsley was notorious for his Salome illustrations, which shocked many of his contemporaries.
It's interesting to think that Beardsley was illustrating Wilde's really famous play, but it was actually Beardsley's illustrations that cut through and really almost stole the show.
This association with Oscar Wilde backfired when Wilde was arrested for gross indecency with male persons. It was illegal to have same-sex relationships in the 1890s. Wilde was arrested, and people assumed that Beardsley also engaged in same-sex relationships.
Of course, and it didn't help that Wilde was seen carrying a yellow book under his arm at his arrest, and although it wasn't actually the Yellow Book, it was a French novel, that was enough to kind of confirm the connection between Wilde and Beardsley in the public imagination. Beardsley was faced with this moment where he'd lost his income. He had to sell his house in Cambridge Street in Pimlico, and he moved to Dieppe for a time. And it really was a moment where he wasn't sure how he would get through this.
Yes, and from that point onwards, until he dies, he's got no reliable income. It's fantastic to think that by the time he died, when he was 25, he was famous internationally. And we have this drawing by Picasso in the exhibition. Picasso read an obituary in a Barcelona magazine, and that's how he discovered Beardsley and was really transfixed by his black and white style. And he wrote how impressed he was with this artist. Beardsley didn't really belong to any school. He was one of a kind.
I think he often gets kind of belittled as almost this kind of schoolboy humour, and he does have a humour and he's interested in all types of sexuality, but he's incredibly knowledgeable. It's really fascinating to see what different artists and different generations take from Beardsley, and particularly his association with the counterculture. It's interesting to see how he gets picked up, for example, in the 60s with psychedelic art. Bands are using his designs in their own artwork.
And beyond his art, I think there was this live hard, die young, quality to his life and to the legend that was created in the 1890s. In many ways, there's a timelessness to his drawings because they are so distinct. Beardsley could be a contemporary artist. He has this ability to still talk to people, this boldness about his work that still appeals to people and will continue for generations on end.